Right after you record, edit, produce your fantastic podcast episode, you think the hardest parts are right behind you. But now you have the joy of having to figure out what to title the episode and how to create amazing, eye-catching SEO show notes. What if I were to tell you I found a really easy way to do it?
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and this is Podtastic Audio, the show which I have designed and created to help you, yes, you, make an amazing show for your audience. And one amazing tool to help you make sure that happens is Riverside.fm. Today's episode is brought to you by Riverside, the ultimate tool for transforming your recording environment into a professional studio no matter where you are. With Riverside.fm, you can capture high-definition audio and video, giving your podcast that polished, professional sheen every single time. It's particularly fantastic for hosting guest interviews. The platform allows you to record each speaker on separate tracks, drastically improving your editing flexibility and audio clarity. Inviting guests is a breeze too. Just send a link, no complex setups or downloads required. And here's something special for you. Use the promo code Podtastic and you get yourself 15% off your Riverside subscription. Whether you're chatting with a guest from across the globe or maybe even just next door, Riverside.fm ensures your recording is crystal clear. So head over to Riverside.fm and remember to use promo code Podtastic for your discount. Elevate your podcast, delight your guests, and engage in your audience with superior quality of Riverside.fm. You know, in the early days of my podcasting journey, when I first got started in podcasting, literally I knew nothing about nothing. When I tell you that, I really mean I knew nothing about nothing. And when we first made our very first episode, or the first, 10 or so episodes, I thought it'd be super clever and super neat to perhaps maybe use these 2-word titles for the episode. So our very first episode, episode 1, was Beef and Bitmojis. We kept the theme with the same letter for each word and having 2 words as the title description. Now, the very first episode, Beef and Bitmojis, we were talking about the new trend when it came to plant-like beef and plant-like burgers, like meatless burgers. And the Bitmoji part, we were talking about how people were putting Bitmojis on their resumes to turn in for new jobs and things like that. It was basically a 2-part discussion on 2 different topics. And that's how we came up with having 2 different words in the title description. And although the word beef and Bitmoji are key words that were definitely used within that podcast episode, but having the title just read episode 1, Beef and Bitmojis, does not tell you what the episode is about. And more importantly, it doesn't tell you why you should listen. And this went on for quite a while. I can't remember exactly how many episodes we did the 2-word titling, but at some point I decided to add in different guests and what their topics were about and kind of weave that into the title and into the description. And I got kind of lazy when it came to writing the description of the episodes. Basically what it was is that I would take whatever the guest had in their bio and just copy and paste that into the show notes of the episode, which wasn't really that great, but it was better than nothing. But today we have these incredible AI-powered tools that can handle that stuff for us. You create the audio podcast and let AI do all the writing. It will come up with the best titles and descriptions possible things that I would never have thought of, it creates. And the AI-powered tool, which I've been using for quite some time here to make all my show notes, all of my titles, all my descriptions, is Flowsend AI. While I was in New York City not that long ago, I had a chance to meet up with the CEO and owner of the company, Flowsend AI. And we were talking all about podcasting and all the cool things it can do and how AI has really helped out a lot of content creators. So the first thing I want to know is, what is Flowsend AI and how can it help us podcasters?
I guess the shortest way I describe it is it's a platform that really can kind of take almost any audio or video file, right? And in this case, we're talking podcasting. So how can it take your podcast and, number one, help you publish faster using AI? So how do you help develop all those really great post-production assets that you need to be really compelling and succeed? And then number two, how do you market your podcast better? So how do you take your episodes and develop a bunch of really interesting kind of content that you are putting on different platforms to alert people to what you just did? And then I guess the third thing that's related to number two is, how do you repurpose it? So, I always compare a podcast to a big piece of clay that you can make into a lot of pieces of pottery. I heard an analogy recently. A guy who I really agree with told me that it's a Thanksgiving turkey. Not everyone loves turkey the day of, but a lot of people love some of those things you make on the leftovers the next day. And so how do you also turn it into other really usable assets to grow your brand, get clients, show your expertise? And so our platform helps make that really easy. And I guess the last thing is we really care about like brand voice. So we want to help you not only like write better, best practice, but also sound like you.
Amazing, man. Yeah. So it's Flowsend AI. AI stands for artificial intelligence, I'm assuming. And so in a nutshell, you take any content that's usually narrated, because I've got a lot of YouTube videos that are out there that aren't narrated. So Flowsend wouldn't do anything with that, would it?
It would. It could. I mean, it's definitely not like music, right? So if it's something, it's not going to tell you what's going on in a video per se that does not have spoken words.
Correct.
So
like a narration.
in a sense, in a sense, I'd say spoken content. Maybe is the best way to put it. So you're right.
Right. Because like I have like videos where it's music in the background of like us doing stuff or playing with the kids and things like that. But there's not a lot of, maybe a couple words spoken, but it's not like an actual, like a podcast or narrated like video and things like that. So if your video is narrated, or your podcast obviously is narrated because it's vocal audio, you would drop that file into Flowsend, and Flowsend does what with the file?
Well, first it transcribes it. So first we generate a high quality transcription. We can talk more about that later, but we do just like an AI transcription, and we think that's pretty damn good for the industry. And then basically once it generates that transcript, and that should take probably no more than a minute or two, you basically click a button, and in under a minute it develops out a full suite of content. That's anything from your, if you're a podcaster, that's your titles, your descriptions, your show notes, timestamps, your YouTube description, which, a lot of times should be different from your regular one, to, promotional assets, your like SEO keywords, social posts, social copy across platforms, blog posts, newsletters, the owned channel is so important, that undervalued in podcasting. And so how do we basically take that file and, basically in minutes, turn it into all that content so you can go kind of promote your podcast better and create a lot of really good content from it? And that's really the short of it. And then, beyond that, we also help you kind of identify interesting parts in the transcript that you might want to clip or take out or, make into creative assets. So really all those different things.
So taking the content within the entire, let's say, audio podcast here. So you take your audio podcast, you drop it right into Flowsend AI, and it transcribes what you said and everything that's said. I believe it also will dictate which speaker is which, and you actually get to choose who is who when you type it into the transcript. So it kind of figures out this person said that person said this, right?
We call that diarization in the transcription industry. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So when you do that, now does that help it figure out the content part later?
Yeah. I mean, what's really interesting about like AI, and I think this is something that is underrated. But to give you like a little bit of my narrative, we've been building AI tools for a while before this company. And I had started a podcast. And it was to kind of support another company I was building. So I think it is a really interesting channel of content and a way to get things out there and a way to, record long form content, either alone or with interesting people. And so, what I started to see was like what I struggled with, right? And I was using tools, I was using Riverside and Descript and for a lot of different things. And then I'd use ChatGPT to try to help me really automate that back into the process. And, I'd say I'm a top 1 percentile ChatGPT user or Claude user. And still I found this like huge pain point in figuring out how to like make this consistent and eliminate like hours off of that work and make it sound like me. And it just was this like annoying, tedious process every single time that kind of restricted me. And I said, I just can't really do it all. And I think with AI, one thing people don't realize is if I'm just going to use ChatGPT myself or something like that, right? And you might, but context is really, really important. What kind of context you give it is absolutely critical in helping it understand what is this recording, in helping chunk it for you if it's too long and making it kind of a reasonable size for the AI to understand, in helping kind of reduce a lot of those like AI ticks, right? And so, one of the things that we embed in the platform often is we want to, if you are a podcaster and you are a podcast who has guests, more likely than not, you want the guest insights to be highlighted a bit more than your own talking when you go publish something.
Yeah, it depends on your guest taste, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you have bad guests, well, then fine. Maybe you shouldn't be publishing it. But,
right.
But yeah, it's, you want to showcase them. And so, how do you help give the AI context of, hey, try to think about what the guest said instead of what the host said and trying to really help, each of these things seems really incremental, but they add up to a much greater whole. And so what we want people to see when they come into the platform is, first and foremost, with zero customization, they should see better results than they're getting by using their own AI tool like a Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or anything else like that. They should say, yeah, I can detect the difference here. And if they can't, there's some stuff we have to work on, but I think a lot of it is like a perspective and taste and what do you care about? And then what we want to do is say, look, we want to make it easy enough for anybody to come in and log into this thing and see that value. I don't care how technology literate or illiterate you are, but then have a lot of like what I'd call power user features that should be easy enough to discover that make this thing really powerful and customizable to suit your workflows and also adopt and learn your voice and the kind of things you want in there. So yeah, it's about like context and it's about like learning about you.
So what are the most popular, like, of all the features that Flowsend does, what is the most popular, like, 3, you think?
Well, I mean, look, I'd say like, what's really funny is you have any kind of like product-led tool where you're giving a tool to people just like that anybody can buy, prosumer. There's a huge like curve in a way, which is, 75, 80% of users are going to only be using your most basic stuff. And we hear that all the time. I mean, I was just doing case studies in the past few weeks and doing customer calls, and there's people who are absolutely loving Flowsend, that all they do is use it to get a quality transcript and get a bunch of interesting titles and descriptions and timestamps and show notes. That's it. Right? They're not even using any of the promotional content that we do. And it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It frustrates me because I know how powerful it can be, but I'm also proud and happy that they're getting value out of it and they want to pay for it.
It's like, right? Say the person who buys a really fast sports car, but literally goes like the speed limit and just doesn't even like open it up or anything like that. You're like, come on. Or like, I guess I'm guilty of it too, because I have a 4-wheel drive truck and I don't think I've only taken it off-road one time. So there you go.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good analogy because you're like, when Ford is making the Ford F-150 or whatever, they are very happy for some casual person who's doing nothing with it to buy it. They're not stopping them, certainly. They love when you come into the dealership and buy the car.
Of course, I'll take your money.
But what they want to do, exactly, but what they want to do is make sure that for the professional, the technical professional coming into the dealership, that they are able to withstand all of those really challenging pressure tests and be the default car. And guess what? By nature of having done that and accommodated those people, they're actually creating a really aspirational product for the casual person, right? Where that person says, well, I would love to be that. Or, this person I know who's a really, talented person is using that. I should buy that too. And that's kind of how we want to be, right? So where we have plenty of people who are just individual creators using it. And then we're doing deals with media companies who are doing tens or hundreds of podcasts and agencies and, other types of assets. And so we love that they use us. And in fact, the fact that they're choosing us should indicate to the creators too, oh yeah, this is a really good platform, right?
I
and
think
you should use this too.
with any great platform, I think it has to be, first off, it has to work amazingly well. It has to deliver on all fronts. It has to deliver things better than anybody else. But I also think it has to be ease of use. Think of Apple, for example, like the iPhone and things like that. They're fairly simple to use and they work very, very well. It's probably why they do so well.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you're like, Apple has a gazillion apps that you can go do on it. Or you could just literally have one screen of apps. And you're like, this is gorgeous, right? I just use my Apple Notes app, you know what I mean? Okay, fine, that's great. But here's what you can do if you really want to soup this thing up. And so, yeah, I think we want to make it that way. And it's harder, of course, as you get more requests and people want certain things of how do you keep it clean? We get in calls with people who are like, I love how clean it is.
Well, how would it be dirty? I don't understand. What's a dirty AI platform?
I just mean it's like busy. It's like too busy. There's too many features. There's too many bells and whistles that I have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, well, those are there. You just don't know about them necessarily. We try to make it look simple, at least for you.
And
so
I appreciate the layout too. I appreciate that you do put the first thing when you get to the content section, after you've uploaded your transcript and all that, you've made the content section side of it all. The first thing it comes to is the examples of titles, because I think having a good title for the episode really is probably one of the most important things when creating a podcast episode is having a really good title. And having good titles help get people press play.
Yeah, and look, I'll be the first person to say I'm biased because I'm I know how I would say everything's important. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's really important to have this and that and a million different things. But of course, at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people are looking for. And the hardest challenge there, Chris, is everyone is comfortable with different styles. And let's say you go to YouTube and you might find a really popular creator who's talking about this one weird trick made me $10 million. Now, does that video title convert views? Probably. You know what I mean? People will click on that kind of stuff. But I'd say 90% of people are not willing to publish things that look like that. That's just not their personal brand, their voice. So we have to kind of toe that line always of saying, what is the best kind of objective, neutral one that we think is going to be really good? And we can look at your transcript and try to understand what's the tone of your podcast or asset in general. And then it can allow you to customize that and put in things of hey, next time and this time, I really want it to look more like XYZ. I want it to be more clickbaity. I want it to be more serious, right? I want it to be shorter and help you get to that really quickly, right? So you can set it and forget it.
And it learns as it goes. So every time you use it, does it kind of take off the last time you used it, what things you put into it?
Yeah, so we just added a bunch of features around that recently where what we've always had is a few different things, which is number one, the ability to ingest your examples. That might be examples of LinkedIn posts that you've done before. It might be a blog post or your newsletter or your titles, right? And we want to ingest those and imitate the style that you like. So what have you done before? That might be punctuation. That might be just tone. Could be capitalization, right? It could be a whole host of different things about all the different ways that we write and talk. And so we've always been able to learn from those. You put those in one time and it'll remember you forever. You keep updating those over time if you want. So you'll say these are, right, and it totally automates your workflow because you don't have to teach a custom GPT or, what do I look like? It's a set it and forget it. And so for people who are producing multiple podcasts, and this is what I talk about scaling, they can have different projects with different voices.
Really?
Different workflows. Yeah. So you might be producing a sports podcast and you might be producing a business podcast. Those are looking very different in terms of probably the way you're styling things and the links you have to put into your descriptions and all of that. So we want to help people manage multiple things because we have people putting different kinds of assets in too, not just podcasts. And so the brand voice can be different across those. And then, recently, another thing we've had for a long time is the ability to chat with an output. And I think that kind of
I didn't know you could do that.
Chris, we got to get on the phone sometime. But you can chat with output and say every single little output, I can chat with it. And I think of it almost like speed editing. Saying I want more variations of this title. I want more, I want these to sound more like this. And if you like what you see, and this was a newer feature we had recently, if you like what you see, you say, this is better. What you could basically say is add this to my preferences, modify my outputs. for in the future as well, right? So, the chat was like local, I guess I would say. But we need to know that you liked it better, right? We can't just like learn if you didn't like it as much. Do we need to, I like that better? Okay, great. So we have a very simple button you click, and basically it starts to like learn your preferences over time, and you're adding to that roster. So we want this platform to be more valuable for you the longer you use it.
Great. That sounds fantastic. I mean, having long-term success, long-term customers is always a win-win for any business, if you ask me. So
yeah,
that's great stuff. So we're talking all text-based stuff here. So it doesn't do anything video related or anything like that, right? It's all just physically text on the screen.
Yeah, and there's automate. I'd say like I look at it in two ways. Like Flowsend is I guess two things at heart, which is number one, it's an analyst. It can analyze your audio or video. It can, tell you about key points in there. It can tell you anything about the recording itself. That's one thing. So it's an expert analyst. Like think about your best possible in the world assistant who can understand all the context behind what happened here and tell you everything about it in
Nice.
moment's notice. Number two, it's a copywriter. And that's where we focus a ton of energy and effort producing really quality copy. And we still have plenty of room to go, as we all do, but that's been a huge focus. And that's my problem with a lot of these tools before. There was some in this podcasting space. And of course, there's like the ChatGPT and generic ones. And I just found that they weren't really up to the quality bar that I set for myself. And that's not to say that I'm some sort of snob, but I love writing. And I thought, probably whatever we develop here will be useful and relevant for anybody in the space. But probably for 90% of people, any other thing is probably fine for them. They might not notice the difference initially.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I got to accept that. But for those who do care, for those who really are thinking about this stuff, and definitely companies and agencies are definitely thinking about that, and then I'd say serious content creators are too, we want to be the preferred tool for them in terms of customizability and personalization and just overall quality. It's kind of like, it when you see it type of thing.
So yeah. Are there any other outputs that you have not put into Flowsend that you were thinking about putting in there? I know you have the Twitter thread, and you have the LinkedIn post one, the blog post one, the newsletter one. Is there something that's another, maybe, I wonder if there's one, I know I guess it could be one of this generic post that you can maybe go across like multiple type of like Facebook and things like that.
Yeah. So, I guess two things. One, I realized I didn't finish the kind of like video question, which is we also want to help you identify the relevant video clips, et cetera. We've seen some mixed quality with some of the video AI platforms. And so we didn't want to, put out something half-assed ourselves around that. Maybe later, I would say. But essentially a lot of people still love us because they help them find those clips faster, and they do want to edit them themselves just at a very high level. So I'll say that number one.
Okay. Yeah.
But around the outputs in the platform, one thing that people, we need to make clear that people don't realize today is we do have like an existing lightweight library of additional ones that you can put in. Now, those are, we have a huge update coming in the next few weeks where we will add like a much bigger library of those. And the reason we don't have them in the content tab that you see by default is because we don't want to overwhelm people. It doesn't make sense. People will be extremely overwhelmed by tens and hundreds of outputs. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But we do add them on the top right of the content tab. And again, we need to make this clearer to people. Not everyone has time to learn. Is you can add additional ones. You can create your own, and you can ask the platform for anything you want, or you can choose something from the existing library. And so a lot of those that we're putting in the library are ones that we've used to success or that we've seen customers use to success. And actually, one thing that we are officially launching as we record this podcast is our community, our user community. And what we want to continue to do with the user community is as people share tips and tricks and things that are working for them, we can also add those to the platform over time so that everyone can leverage the collective output and expertise of other people using the platform. And so we're already adding some of those today, but we want to really soup that up.
So is it very customizable then? So for example, if I wanted to only use like 4 of the outputs, right? And it's the only ones I use every time. Can I just push the other ones out of view so I only have the 4 to work with?
Yes, absolutely. So you could already do that before. Well, again, some of the stuff needs to be more discoverable. But then literally as we speak today, and this should maybe show you the speed at which we're shipping, even though we're a young company. Today, we added the ability to change the order of your entire feed content feed based on what you want and remove them in a much simpler way.
Easy,
And the reason,
nice.
And so, you could always toggle them on and off, but one reason we wanted to add removals is because a lot of times people want to experiment with custom outputs. And maybe they said, I actually didn't really like that, or I didn't want that. And so can they just delete that more easily? So again, we're trying to make it highly, highly customizable, but we want it to be simple enough that even if you never, ever, ever are someone who thinks about customization, you're still getting value out of it.
That's great, man. That's good stuff. So in a nutshell, basically, if you need a LinkedIn post based on this podcast episode, you have that available. If you need a Twitter thread, X thread, they call it now, you have that available. And if you want actually like really good show titles for this episode, you can physically have those and you can change them up. I think there under each output, I believe there's maybe it's 5 different things you can do. One is like make it more casual, one make it more serious. I think the other one is like longer, shorter, and I think the other one was like just change it. But I think even with that, you can still type in examples of keywords or things you want to put in that, like for a title, for example. Because I've done that where I say, okay, create a title, but make sure it uses this phrase or this keyword in the title, and it'll still create that.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about around chat, which is those things that you can do. Those are just examples. We're trying to almost guide, like I said, it's so hard to guide people sometimes in terms of the things they can do. It's a problem of like imagination, maybe is the way I'd put it. Is like, not most people don't have time to think about this stuff. They got other jobs half the time, maybe 90% of the time. And then, even if they don't, they're kind of like, I just need this thing to work and move quickly. So we put in those examples of like, make it shorter, make it longer, make it whatever, highlight these things because we want to get their minds rolling, but you could really put anything in there. And so we've seen incredibly creative use cases of people customizing that in really interesting ways.
Yeah.
So
I love it, dude. I love the hardest part for me before I even, use Flowsend, before I even use that, I was using ChatGPT to kind of give me ideas, like give me 10 titles for this episode about blank, blank, and blank. And it doesn't even hear the episode. So just based on what I've told it so far, without going through the entire transcript, just based on what I told it, it's going to come up with some things. And they may not always be accurate because it's not pulling things from the episode because it doesn't know what the episode is. But with yours, it actually knows what the episode is. It actually hears the episode. So actually based on the things that were physically said in the episode, it's going to make a great title. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. And again, there's always room to grow, but what we want to do is really be the best at understanding the context of what you're putting into the platform. And audio and video is a really funny beast, of course. And I think, some of these generic AI solutions are really bad at those, on a relative basis, because it's just a very interesting format. I think it's the most interesting format possible. And clearly you agree, given how passionate you are about podcasting and how much you've invested in it. But it's one of like the last bastions of original content, if that makes sense. And where AI really shines, AI can be fine at producing, something from the ground up. It'll produce something fine, mediocre, I would say. But where it shines is in repurposing and remixing original content. And then when you layer additional expertise on top of that, and we want to layer expertise into the platform so you don't have to think about it, you don't have time to be an AI expert, that's where you really start to cook, as they say.
Yeah, speaking of AI experts, I keep hearing the big buzzword is like an AI prompter is like a new career or something. Like how much prompting does it go into creating something like this?
A lot. A lot. And it's not like one prompt, it's like chaining them and doing many things. Maybe behind your titles, there might be many different things, many different steps. So,
wow.
And again, like, not that you want to expose the complexity. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you remember, there was a study done a bunch of years ago about kayak.com, which was popular for a while. It's a book, so it was the popular one. And one thing they always talked about was they generated the results immediately right after you searched. But if you have used kayak.com, you know that they really generated them kind of slowly. Like it took 10, 15 seconds of like a loading bar before they got to the results. And from everything that was out there, that was intentional. Where Kayak wanted to make what they were doing, they wanted to almost show you, hey, this is hard. So they made it intentionally slower than the platform actually was. Or else maybe you wouldn't value the work they put into it from a technical perspective.
Interesting.
And I always find that stuff funny because we definitely don't want to make it more complex than it seems. But you hope people appreciate it and understand the work that goes into it. And if there's someone who can't do that, yeah, great. Maybe they're not a good user, honestly. Not that they can't use it, they're getting good value out of it. But if they want to use something else or think there's something else that's just fine, great. I use a GPT bot or something. I'm like, okay, great. I won't stop you. But I wouldn't have started this company because, if I didn't think that there was an opportunity, even for people who sort of thought they were middle tier experts.
This is not only limited to YouTube and podcasting. I just thought about this. If you were like going to college, and when you're in college, a lot of people pull out their recording devices and they record the lecture and things like that. That audio from that lecture, you could drop into Flowsend and then you can spit out like all the best keynote parts or all the best I guess you can do this kind of the same thing, but not publish it, but just have those notes all kind of broken down, right?
Yeah, it's really funny you said that.
Oh, someone says that already?
I'm laughing because we have, look, we think about this stuff all day, obviously. And, we continue to build this technology that, of course, podcasting is a primary use case. We have people doing other things with it. We have people putting in webinars and events. And, one funny thing I'm doing with it, just as another example, is I am creating Flowsend's case studies using the platform. How am I doing that? I am doing calls with customers. We are having 30-minute to hour-long calls with them. And I already have created my case study template in Flowsend. Here's the different outputs I want. I have my kind of like custom prop setup of here's the format. I have examples of what I think good looks like in terms of sounding like I want it to sound. And I just plug those calls in and it outputs them right there. And you'll see that. Now I'll put them on the website in a few weeks, a week or two or something, just more about getting to it. But it makes it so easy. I mean, it's truly incredible. And so the course thing is something that I have thought about a lot of how would this be implemented as a separate application more jointly on a college campus. Because again, we built so much technology to support that. It's more about like a front end kind of thing. But you're like, well, what if one person in the class uploads the recording? And suddenly that becomes part of everyone's database. And they can chat with it.
I mean, it could go for business meetings and things of that sort. It can go for pretty much anything that's physically recorded, whether it's audio or video. So I guess if somebody even had their iPhone out and they're just recording the video part, could you take that file from the iPhone and drop it in there and do the same thing with it?
I do that already today.
Oh, look at you, man! One step ahead. Yeah, I mean,
I am the number one test case. I think for us, what you're alluding to here, and I think it's interesting, is like, some people are never going to even think about this stuff. But how do we make these like different templates and use cases really easy for you to do when you come into the platform? So you can see that, and we can give you those ideas, if that makes sense.
Right. And how many templates can you physically load into a Flowsend account?
Unlimited.
It's unlimited. Is it really unlimited, or is it like a cap? It could be a cap on it, right? It's got to be a cap.
No. Well, look, we obviously have costs in our business beyond the people, and that's its own thing. We also have, it costs us money, whether it's transcription or and then putting out content. And so we have to either we had to choose how we're going to price this thing. I'm like, well, some platforms charge based on how much content you create. They have all these credits, and you have AI credits, and that really never made sense to me. It's not something that kind of sticks in someone's mind as like a average person. Really, almost nobody thinks about things in those ways. And so we're basically like, well, we'll charge you based on minutes, because that means you're like a serious uploader. Like, whether you're a very consistent podcaster, very prolific, or a company. But we don't want to charge people based on the outputs they get, because our belief is you should be squeezing every last drop of value out of every single thing that you were putting out there.
Absolutely.
It took time for you to record something. It took time for you to create anything, to even record a note in your phone. That takes time. To record a podcast, to do a webinar, to do that. You should be getting the maximum possible. We do not want to charge you for that today. It's like, that's a win-win outcome. Yeah, it cost us money, but guess what? In the long term, benefiting the community, benefiting the user, it'll come back around. We know it will, and we'll get better.
Yeah. So you charge per minute of actual audio or video, whether it is either or, not the physical size, I guess. Now, based on that, what is the limitations of how much files, like how big of a file can someone dump into Flowsend? Could it be a 4K, 8K video or no?
10 gigs is the limit.
That's
I guess
per file or?
per file.
10
Per
gigs. That's, I mean, I don't know what a 4K
That's
video.
a lot. No one has had the problem. And no one has said to us that my file did not upload because it was too big. So, and I saw some platform in our space, in general announce like, we can now accommodate 2 gigabyte videos. And I was like, that's chump change.
Look at you.
We've done 10 since the beginning. Now, of course, like that's not ideal for you because number one, as you mentioned, we're not like trying to read video and interpret what was said in there, or sorry, what's in the video. So you'd be just the same for the most part today, uploading an MP3 as you would an MP4 or something else. But who knows? We might add stuff in the future around that. So we don't want to stop you. And also, it's just slower to upload on your side because it's your upload speed of your internet.
So the smart thing to do, I guess, if you are a video YouTube content creator and you say, I got to do everything 4K all day, I want the best video and all the best stuff. But if you can make a super like, what is it? What is the base? What is below HD levels? Like 480 or whatever it is quality. If you can make a really low quality version of that same content, just so you can upload it into Flowsend, wouldn't things move much faster for you? Talking about data and things like that, but still keep your 4K video version that you can put on YouTube. But you just want to get the transcript, just so you can get the Flowsend cool stuff.
Yeah, well, and again, you can still upload it into our platform, but I even have like a little on my Mac. I have a little right click thing, automation that I say like convert this video to an MP3. And I do that before I upload a lot of our stuff in. So anyways.
It probably makes it much faster. I would assume that a 4K video, a 20-minute 4K video uploads much slower than say a 20-minute MP3, audio.
Again, it's not a restriction of Flowsend. It's about your internet basically is what we are restricted by. It's truly just your internet. But we also, we upload YouTube videos really quickly. So if you even upload your 8K YouTube video into our platform, it goes super fast.
Right from YouTube, or you have to go through your computer first?
No, you can upload YouTube links today into the platform.
Wow, check that out. Now, have you taken a YouTube video that's on YouTube with already YouTube's transcript? Because YouTube already transcribes stuff for you automatically, and have compared it to Flowsend's, and what have you seen?
Ours is better, I guess I would say in short.
Like more accurate with the words and things like that? More accurate?
Yeah, more accurate. Definitely more accurate, right? And again, that's, we've had an interesting debate about that recently in the company because we want to provide the best possible AI transcription that you can get. Now, we have developed a proprietary process that is not released to customers today, for a variety of reasons. And one of them is that we love to have a little bit of human auditing, but to produce some of the most accurate transcripts we've ever seen. And the reason we didn't really advertise it is, it's just hard to compete in that market or, get brand recognition. We're building something different and we think, it's more valuable in a lot of other ways. But we've had some customers come to us recently and ask us if we have kind of human transcription and what that looks like. And we've gotten actually a lot of really interesting momentum based on that and potential deals coming in the pipe where we can charge a lot less and make it even better than they have today. So it's interesting. Like we find a lot of people don't, as you probably see on YouTube, plenty of people don't even upload their own transcript. They just upload and YouTube does their own thing or they upload something they just got from another platform. But, for those that really care about their transcript and want to upload it somewhere else and it to be really clean, we also are starting to provide services for that too. So it's a funny question you asked.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of transcripts because I personally have never really used them to look at. Well, I've never consumed them, let's just say that really. And I guess it comes in handy when you're trying to create content based on the transcript like Flowsend does. Yeah, it's absolutely a necessity to get really good content to come out of this podcast we created. It really needs to understand what was said in the audio and has to get that pretty accurate as it possibly can.
Yeah, and that's why we try to do as good as possible on the platform. And a lot of times in the process of giving additional context to the AI around the transcript that was generated, it'll actually be able to understand a lot of the things that was there. And so even if you have errors in your transcript, it generally does not affect your outputs. So that's, something we've had to tell some customers because they're like, oh, do I need to correct everything? And it's like, absolutely not. It'll still produce highly accurate and engaging content.
So for podcasting here, speaking here, do you have any advice that you'd give like podcasters who are considering integrating like AI tools like Flowsend or other ones into their production process?
Yeah, I mean, like at a high level, like, don't be stubborn. I'm a firm believer in like imperfection, number one, and releasing imperfect things. But at the same time, I do think, it's worth investing a little bit of money and time into what you're doing if you care about it. Value your own time. And so I always thought about how to strike that balance myself because I'm really cheap. And when I started, I was like, well, I'll just use whatever ChatGPT subscription I have, and I'll get a software maybe to record with someone else. And beyond that, a little bit of editing, paying for that. But beyond that, nothing. I think what I realized pretty quickly was that's going to create a lot of churn, and people talk a lot about that. Most podcasts don't make it to 10 episodes. And it takes a special kind of person to get past that. And I think one of the reasons is like, you either invest too much and you're out of money, or you don't invest enough. You don't invest enough. You're like, oh, I just paid an agency $6,000 per episode to, it's like, wait, okay, what are you doing? This is not going to get ROI from that. You're not giving yourself a chance. Or you don't invest anything. You're doing it all yourself. And you're taking too much time and you're totally drained. And it takes consistency to build an audience and to find your voice a little bit. And so my advice to people is focus on using relevant AI tools to clean your audio. Buy some equipment that helps make it better for you. Right? Do the research, if you have guests on, right? Try to ask questions and have a perspective. And again, invest in just like some of the basic kind of AI tools that are out there to, clean audio and maybe breaks and all that kind of stuff. But don't stress too much over editing every little piece of content and editing things down. People listen to Joe Rogan. That's the most listened to podcaster basically in the world. And he has like 4-hour episodes. Again, it's different, but it's worth thinking about of like, okay, well, people aren't hanging on to every word. Be easy on yourself. Try to be consistent in releasing, get something out there, and then try to actually work on that kind of like post-production stuff that is tedious and that you ignore and that Flowsend helps with, because that's going to help you try to get more reach and make that investment worth it. And I think it's kind of underrated. People don't think about that like repurposing and marketing aspect quite enough. They just assume that people are going to find them.
Yeah, I built it, put it out there. They should listen. Yeah.
And it's like podcasting, the joke I make is like podcasting is the least viral form of content ever invented. It's like it mostly lives on like non-algorithmic platforms. And so no one's really going to search for your thing. They heard about it from their friend, or they saw you on another platform talking about this. And so, focus on this conversion and try to like just build a very simple stack of like, maybe an editing tool that has a little bit of AI in it if you don't really know how to like control audio and you don't have money to hire somebody. And then find a tool that can help you in that post-production and marketing process that can just help automate some of that out.
Yeah, I know that AI, and there's a lot of audio editing tools that when I jumped into this, there wasn't much of anything that I knew of. I had to figure this out the hard way, how to do this kind of stuff. And, through trial and error, you figure things out. And I think one thing that we were really struggling with that I now looking back probably was the titles and descriptions. Like I didn't really create decent titles and descriptions until probably episode 150 or whatever. It was way beyond, like way past than I should have. And I just thought probably, I made a lot of mistakes. When you first start off in podcasting, we all make a lot of mistakes. Same thing with YouTube too. We all make a lot of mistakes. We all kind of learn from those mistakes. But I think one of the mistakes is like thinking that just because you recorded it and you put it onto even Apple Podcasts, for example, there's no guarantee anyone's going to listen to it. There's no guarantee it's going to be found. And so what Flowsend and tools like Flowsend help create amazing titles to help get people to press play. And I think a lot of it is with SEO keywords and SEO type stuff, which is another beast if you don't know what you're looking for, how it even works, how to create amazing, show description. And, even with something simple like a post on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, having, right keywords in that, and maybe even hashtags. And it's another thing that Flowsend does, which I love so great, is it does SEO keywords. But what I have done is I've said, turn these into hashtags so I can use these on places like LinkedIn and Instagram and places like that, because that's another thing. I think having the right hashtags does help put you in front of the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about increasing your odds in this whole internet game. And my kind of thesis today is you really can't AI an editor or a content editor. When you can hire somebody and you can use AI, but it's going to be kind of crappy. Just being honest, I've tried different things. It's really hard. You got to have your own voice and perspective. Now it can help you with audio quality and things like that, but not content. And what we want, people who care about podcasting, they care about content. They're putting something out there. They're putting their voice out there. We want them to have as much time to focus on that kind of core content and be able to automate everything else to the extent possible. And the one thing I think is a misperception, and I was talking to a big podcaster, hundreds of thousands of downloaded episode at least, maybe millions, just yesterday. And he's like, well, I feel like we should spend, more time on marketing, not less, when we were talking about Flowsend. And my whole thing was, no, I think we're actually in complete agreement. The problem is that most AI tools out there are too generic. And so you think, well, I'm not going to just turn it over to them. So when I say automate, I don't mean spend no time. Yeah, if you want to do that, sure. But I mean, how do you get the outputs that you really care about and want, and have even more time to think about, here's all these things I kind of left on the floor before that I never had time to do. And now I really want to imagine, here's how I'd promote this thing if I could. And you put, kind of go in and set it and forget it. So I think people should spend more time on that stuff, and then I'll have as much time as possible to spend on their core content, because that's what people are going to listen for at the end of the day. Is it good? Is it compelling?
Right. I mean, no matter how much, I always say, no matter how much gear you spent money on, no matter how great clean your audio is, no matter of all that stuff, if you don't have anything good to say or any content or anything valuable or anything interesting to say, then no one's going to come to you in the first place. So
exactly. And again, that's not to say you need to put too much pressure on yourself in one episode. It's not easy. You need to give yourself time to find your voice a little bit, find your perspective. I hear too many people are pre-planning. And I do it myself. I mean, I'm starting a new podcast after kind of, I had a podcast that supported an old business of mine, and I've still been releasing episodes from that, but I wanted to start up, kind of a live series for Flowsend. And I don't know, I just kind of put it off forever. Then I had someone I know who I really wanted to have on, and he's like, let's just record it now. I was like, no, I don't know. I got a plan. He's like, stop. And so people get in their own head, and that includes me. And I know, I've done this before. And so, don't be too perfectionist about it all.
Yeah, I know. I get the feeling too. I know the same way, because you would not believe how many times here on Podtastic Audio I've had to retake an episode. I just didn't like the way I was doing it, or I didn't like the way I was, presenting it on the microphone, and I would do take after take after take. And I'm like, what are I doing? I make it look easy, but there's a lot of trial and error behind all of this to make sure it's the great. And I know that sometimes when you get out of your own headspace, you just relax and you just get in there and do your thing. And it's great. It's a wonderful thing. And I think tools like Flowsend help take the things that you've already created, the podcast that you've already made, and it just takes it and it just gives you all these outputs that you can share and tag along with it. For me, it was always the description was hard to figure out, or what are the keywords, or what's this episode about in a summary? I don't know. If you're talking with your buddy about 15 different things, what do you title that? Because you've talked about 15 different things, and Flowsend will help figure out the best things that it thinks should be maybe the title about that thing. So I think it's great for that kind of stuff, because creating the audio for me seems to be the easiest part of this whole podcasting process. And the hard part for me is the thing you've just created. What do you do with it? How do you make sure somebody else finds it? And I think Flowsend is fantastic for that stuff.
No, there's one thing that I show people sometimes. I like to create posts after podcast about what were the top, pieces of advice or top insights from the guest. And let's say that I record my episode. If I wanted to do that myself, what I'd have to do is literally read the entire transcript, listen 2 times, mark down every single one. And I need to know what I'm looking for in the first place. That's really hard. What I can do is I can upload an episode of Flowsend and I can, create a little custom prompt and say, hey, tell me the top 5 insights from this guest. And it produces that back to me in 5 seconds.
And it's usually pretty good stuff too. It's stuff that you don't usually have to
I almost directly post it.
Right.
So like LinkedIn. And that's without even like adding examples in first or doing other kinds of personalization. And so why I say that is because that is almost impossible for a human. You need to give someone a task to go listen to that entire thing, unless you told them it before, and then it would still be really hard. So that's my entire thing with all this AI tools. Is like, again, focus on the content, focus on sounding like you want to sound, focus on talk about the content you want to, and use other tools to go figure things out for you, and use trial and error to find out what you like, and give yourself the best odds of success, whatever that means to you. Maybe that means more listens. Maybe that means more clients. Maybe that means just having more fun.
Yeah, definitely. I agree on all of those. Well, Michael, this has been fantastic having you stop by today, man. I really appreciate you spending your time with me, talking all about Flowsend. And I absolutely love Flowsend. I use it for every episode. I've been using it since probably first talked to you, whatever it was, a while back. And it's been a great platform for me and for any podcaster or even a YouTuber out there that needs to create like all the text-based stuff around the content they already created. It's amazing, man. So where can everybody find out about you and Flowsend?
Yeah, I mean, we're at flowsend.ai. I'm on Twitter, Miguel Katz. I'm on LinkedIn. And so Michael N. Katz, the whole host of different things. You can find me there. And then, of course, you can try out Flowsend. And if you want to talk about some of the more advanced stuff, you want a custom demo or help us, get you set up, we're happy to do that too, because we want to see people successful and really succeeding off the bat.
That was fantastic. It was so great being able to meet Michael in person, sit down in his office, see where the company actually resides right there in the middle of New York City. What a great and wonderful experience. It was awesome. So if you are struggling, or perhaps maybe your show descriptions are a little lackluster, they don't really get somebody to press play. And that's really what it's all about. It's getting that person, that new listener, to see your title of your episode and say, yes, I want to press play on this one because this one is speaking to me. Well, then check out some of these AI tools, including Flowsend.ai. Hey, thank you so much for listening all the way to the very end of the episode. And because you listened all the way to the very end, I'm going to give you first dibs on my exclusive brand new offer I have. As of right now, right now, I'm going to be doing personal one-on-one coaching for any podcaster that's either struggling with their podcast or wants to elevate their podcast, or maybe somebody doesn't know how to start a podcast and they need help just figuring out the basics. I am here to help you out. One-on-one coaching is now available, and there will be a special link in the show notes of this very episode where you can schedule a call with me. And because it's me doing these virtual calls one-on-one, space will definitely be limited. That's why I gave you first priority. I hope to see you soon, and until next time, happy podcasting.